7 o'clock.
No, 7:01. We need
7:01 is what we need? All right,
one more minute.
got it.
One more minute, Joe.
15 minutes.
Okay. Good evening. The board convened its meeting at 6:33 with a quorum present at the Administrative Service Center, where the public hearing on the 2021-2022 tentative budget was held. The board recessed at the Administrative Service and is now reconvening at South High School, where we will proceed with the rest of the meeting, starting with the approval of minutes. So I need a motion for the approval of minutes for the August 16th, 2021 business meeting, the August 16th, 2021 closed meeting, the September 13th, 2021 workshop meeting, the September 13th, 2021 closed meeting.
So moved.
Okay, we have an approval. We're looking for an approval of minutes for the August 16th business meeting, the August 16th closed meeting, the September 13th workshop meeting, and the September 13th closed meeting, all 2021.
So moved.
Oh, you can have it.
Terry and Mike.
Oh,
Thank you very much.
Joanna beat me.
Oh, Terry and Joanna.
Terry and Joanna?
Yeah.
Thank you. Terry Pavicic.
Aye.
Joanna Vasquez Drexler.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Christopher Espinoza.
Aye.
Sherelle Fuller.
Aye.
Jenny Hagstrom.
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye. The minutes are approved. Now we'll move to the reception of visitors. This meeting agenda includes 2 opportunities for comments from the audience. The first reception of visitors is intended for audience members to address the board about any agenda item on which the board will vote. The second reception of visitors is intended for audience members to address the board on any topic pertaining to Community High School District 99. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes and provide all visitors an equal opportunity to address the board. Individuals needing more time should submit their thoughts in writing to the board secretary, Mrs. Nidek. Visitors addressing the board need to submit a comment slip to the board secretary and will be invited to the microphone. Prior to addressing the board audience, meetings are being tape recorded for the purpose of producing accurate meeting minutes, and they are being streamed live. The board's presiding officer, which is me, reserves the right to modify these protocols if circumstances warrant. Audience observation of these protocols is appreciated. So, who do we go first?
We have 2 for the first reception of visitors. The first is Laura Hoyce.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Laura Hoyce. I'm requesting that the board tonight table item number 11 on the agenda, which is the proposed policy changes to the board policy for public participation at school board meetings. At the first reading of this proposed changed policy, Superintendent Hank said the only real change is prioritizing in-district over out-of-district speakers. Otherwise, these are just clarifications. But what we see in the changed policy is major changes that are intended to silence and cancel us. At least that's how we feel. Wake Up D99 objected to these changes within a week after the August board meeting. We submitted a community-friendly version of the policy, which was rejected, and then we asked you to reconsider. It's critically important that we have the right to speak and address the board as is required under the law. I believe Hank has said that the existing 30-minute and 20-minute minimums are no different than the 30 and 20-minute maximums, and that the board is not seeking to reduce the amount of time the public has to address the board. But we're finding that hard to believe because the new policy says that for both the agenda items and the non-agenda items, up to 30 minutes is allowed, all told. So if we have that wrong, please advise, but we do think that this requires further consideration, and we're asking you to table or vote it down this evening and keep the existing policy. We feel this way because at the June meeting, The board walked out on a recess when a speaker, who happened to be me, went over the 3-minute time limit and then came back some 15, 20 minutes later, and we had a few more speakers, and then the second speaker went over the 3 minutes, and the meeting, the public comment was shut down. Since then, of course, we've been careful to respect the 3-minute time limit. The board president, Nancy Kupka, said in June in open session, while we represent a part of the community, we don't represent the entire community. By saying this, Kupka revealed that the board favors constituents who voted for them or may agree with their point of view, and that the board does not represent those who disagree with the board or state mandates. And then in July, roughly 130 of the 150 people there were part of our group. So we're asking that the board consider again whether this policy is a good idea at this time, when you have many, many parents very concerned about their kids and all that's going on. It's a stressful time for everyone, and we do need to have sufficient speaker time to address the board and to also have our questions answered and be provided with the information that we're seeking. Thank you.
Since you, excuse me, I'd just like to address something. Since you inferred something from my statement that because I said that those people who speak today represent a portion of the community, we were not interested in those people who didn't vote for us, that is patently false. That is patently false. You do represent a portion of the community. We are happy to hear from you. I believe in protests, but please do not infer from my words that people who did not vote for us, I don't know who you voted for, are not important to us, because that is not true, and that is not anywhere near what was meant.
Okay. Well, if I have
Speaker is
erred
Janet
in the
Winningham.
quotation, we'll check the
There
video.
should not be a dialogue. The next,
Wonderful idea to gain control of your meetings, to get decorum back, civility back, and
I need you to
prioritize.
sorry to interrupt you. You need to pull your mask up, please.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Prioritize the district residents over people who do not live here in terms of speaking. There's a misconception, I believe, about the purpose of a public portion of a public meeting. This is not a town hall. It is a meeting in public. It is not a public meeting, and you need to be able to conduct your business in open presentation, but that doesn't mean that this is a constant debate. And I appreciate the changes that you've made to make a civilized and open forum for a period of time, but the histrionics and the lack of civility and decorum should not be tolerated. Thank you.
Any other speakers?
I have a couple that check both boxes, so I'm not sure if anybody else was wanting to speak on this policy or not. I tried to sort it out based on the best of my ability, but if there's somebody else that submitted a slip that wished to speak and I'm skipping you, I want you to know you have an opportunity now.
That's me.
All right, please address.
Clear, I'd be on the second.
You're on the second. All right, that's it for the first reception of visitors.
Okay, we'll move to the recommendations and reports of the superintendent.
All right, I'm happy to announce that the board has been recognized by the Illinois Association of School Boards for their governance practices. Only 35 school districts in Illinois were recognized by this award this year. Boards typically submit for this recognition about every 2 to 3 years. The last time that we submitted was in 2017. What this indicates is that the board has participated in professional development, has participated in workshops with the IASB for board self-evaluation and growth, and it indicates that the entire board has continued to be trained in effective governance and participate along with the state organization. So congratulations to the board for achieving this recognition. right, the report on return to in-person learning. You know, it wouldn't be the pandemic if things weren't constantly changing and guidance wasn't constantly showing up for superintendents after 4 p.m. on Fridays. There's a bunch of guidance that came out. There's a little bit that I want to focus on. The September 3rd Illinois Department of Public Health FAQ document discussed the guidance for masks, vaccinations, and testing. I did express my concern in public with the fact that the governor signed an executive order and it took over 2 weeks to get this guidance. It's very difficult to lead when we aren't provided information in a timely fashion. In this guidance, really, there's no changes to our practices from this guidance regarding masks. They're still required in all public indoor spaces. Students can remove them when, students and staff, visitors can remove them outside. Vaccinations, there is as the board is aware, a vaccination requirement for all K-12 educators in Illinois. This was moved last week or the week before, I think the week before, to September 19th from the original date, and then the second dose, if they're in a 2-dose series, must be administered no later than October 19th. If a staff member chooses not to be vaccinated or report that they are vaccinated, then they are choosing the testing route, and they would need to undergo weekly testing. It's recommended from IDPH and DuPage County Health Department that that be a PCR test, which is what we're following that recommendation. We have been providing testing opportunities on site for our staff. But we've also allowed staff to go off-site. Some are more comfortable with their own physician or pharmacist. So we have tried to be as accommodating as possible with our staff. So far, we haven't experienced many concerns or issues that we haven't been able to work through with individual employees. So we're complying with this executive order and working our way through it. Questions on any of that from board members? All right, just as last year, we have a COVID dashboard posted online. So far, we are only reporting student numbers. We have less than 5 cases of staff numbers. So if this number starts to grow among staff, we'll update the data with the beginning of the year up until that point. Right now, the numbers are so small among staff that if you started identifying which week, which staff member, it'd be pretty easy to identify who that staff member is. You can see our numbers are very low. Our numbers of close contacts would be at least double that if it wasn't for the rate of vaccinations amongst our student body. So that is keeping the close contact numbers low right now. I've circled where that menu is. You can get the dashboard from the webpage. That's that purple bar. And we have a menu item at the top that says COVID info. From that is a link to the dashboard. Oh, and I also, you may have read in the newspaper that we have had, I believe, 3 what they consider outbreaks. An outbreak this year, last year an outbreak was 5 or more people that were connected cases. Now they've reduced that down to 2. So transmission at school that is determined to occur at school is an outbreak. So that bar is very different this year. I know there's been a lot of newspaper reports talking about the number of outbreaks across Illinois. That's to be expected when any transmission is an outbreak. We've had, I believe, up to this point, 2 at South. One was in athletics or activities. The other one, they listed as classroom, but it was lunchroom. And then we have one at North that was connected back to the lunchroom. So those numbers, we didn't have a lot of transmission last year. We had very few cases of it. However, when you add in the variable of athletics and the variable of the lunchroom, and the fact that people are 3 feet apart this year instead of 6 feet, we're likely to, and then outbreak is from 5 to 2, it is likely that we will see that outbreak number be different this year than it was last year. No, questions on the dashboard?
Do you know just approximately what percentage of our students have been vaccinated?
We haven't asked for those records at this point because there's no payoff for going through gathering and maintaining and keeping those records. I would guess by the number of close contacts that have been eliminated because they're vaccinated, we're over 50%. And that's just, I mean, that's a scientific guess. There's no real data that I can tell you.
I'm glad this is so easy to find on our website too. I know that not all districts have made the information as easy to find, and so this seems, anything you want to know about COVID, there you go, and easy to find the dashboard.
Yeah, and the numbers are very low. I think that, relatively
Promising.
Yeah, it looks like our students are doing what it takes and our staff are doing what it takes to keep themselves safe. All right, this has been an interesting roller coaster with test to stay protocol. IDPH seemed to indicate this was an option for students. Then DuPage County Health Department said that they would not be in support of it or allow it. And then DuPage County Health Department said that they won't stop us from doing it, but will not provide support or guidance on the test to stay protocol. And then an executive order came out late Friday night, as all guidance comes out. And that one clearly in the executive order outlines the test to stay protocol option is available to all schools. So that executive order has the final say on this matter. So now that it's very clearly allowed within the schools, we're working with our elementary partners and other area high schools to figure out what this might look like and how it might work. Really, the general idea of it is that if a student was identified as a close contact, they would then be provided the option to enter into the test to stay protocol. Now, if they're vaccinated, obviously they're not a close contact, so they wouldn't have to opt whether or not to enter into the test to stay protocol. If they choose to enter into the test to stay protocol, we would use a third-party testing company, much like what we're doing for staff testing right now. They would have to agree and get parental consent to participate in the testing. It would be the nasal swab that's just like inside the front of the nostrils, right? It's not the one that goes deep into your sinus cavity. Or a cheek swab. Either one of those are available. They would test on days 1, 3, 5, and 7. As long as they're testing and their tests are coming up negative, they can continue to participate in school activities. If they choose not to participate in the test to stay protocol, they have to do the 10-day quarantine as a close contact. If they come up positive, obviously now it's a positive case. And as long as it's negative, they can remain at school. One of the key caveats to be able to run this program is that universal masking is required. Okay, so everybody must be masked while indoors for this to be an option. Now, right now, that's not that big of a deal, right? Because there's a universal masking requirement indoors across the state. But this is where all of the flow chart and branching plays in. Earlier this summer, I brought the board a recommendation that under certain times we would be fully masked, and at other times it would be mask recommended but optional. If the executive order on masks expires, we could only move to that option, mask optional recommended model, if we weren't doing test to stay. So if we want the test to stay option to be on the table, universal masking for all students needs to be on the table. So there's going to be some decisions to make here moving forward. We are working through, as I said, what the protocols would be. We're looking at what other health departments are recommending for their schools, as DuPage County isn't providing guidance for this. And District 99, our elementary partners, as I said, are working with a third-party lab to see what this might look like and be set up to be. If this goes into place, there wouldn't be any cost to the district or to the families for the testing. It would be provided at no cost. So this is kind of where we're at now. It looks like we've got the go-ahead to move forward with something like this, but we're going to need to really put together the protocols, how it would work, what it would look like in our nursing office. There would be additional, workload for our health and student services to make this work, right? So we'll work on this over the next few weeks, and probably at the October 4th board workshop, come back with an update as to what we're going to do around here. So there's just some variables to weigh out here as to what we might want to do. It's really what's more important to us, the test to stay or the masking, right? And what does that look like moving forward? So give us a couple of weeks to work through it now that we've got the full go-ahead, and then we'll come back and discuss it more with the board in a couple of weeks. Any questions on any of that?
If this is like other things that have happened in the past, I would expect that we'll make a decision, then 2 days later there'll be an executive order telling us that we can't do it or we have to do it
Or
differently.
that we have to do it differently?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm glad though that this is something that might be a possibility. Anything that we can do to keep our students in school safely is a welcome option. I believe that the way this would work though, so let's say you test positive on day 5. Would you then be quarantining the 10 days that started back from your exposure though, right? It wouldn't like start afresh at 10 days on the day you test.
I'm not 100% sure on that one.
I'd be curious to know about
That's one of the things that we'll have to work through on the protocol as to when all of those numbers and dates start.
All right, thanks.
Is this something that would be labor, like it's not an option to do it while the mask mandate is in place and then take it away, or is it?
No, it could be. Like we could do it while the mask mandate's in place. I just don't know what, we got to figure out what the pluses and minuses are, what, you don't want to give students a pathway to stay at school and then take that pathway away, but at the same time, I know people would like to get rid of masks if the conditions indicate that it would be right to do so. So, like much of the pandemic, there's no easy answer here to any of this. So we want to be thoughtful. Right. We want to work through it. We want to make sure that we communicate to be able to communicate to families in advance, like these kinds of questions, and work through it. So,
thanks for pursuing this, Hank. Appreciate it.
Yep. Well, we'll see what comes of it. All right, any other questions on the return to school?
Nope.
All right. School wellness policy implementation and review. I'm going to bring Scott up here. This is a requirement that every 3 years that we provide you an update on the school wellness implementation.
Yeah, good evening. So I just wanted to highlight a few things. As the board was aware, I think last year as well, but the work of Chartwells and Jaree in terms of the outreach that we had for part of our policy review is looking at our food service. And so I wanted to acknowledge the efforts that Chartwells made along with Jaree in organizing that outreach initiative. And also just, as I know you were aware, but we did reach out and deliver meal kits to our homeless families throughout the Chicagoland area. So we went as far as Lansing, Illinois and Chicago and different places. So I just wanted the board to be aware of that. And then we'd like to bring back an update in June of 2022 to look at and get feedback from our food service program as we're, exiting the National School Lunch Program. So just to give you an update of how the year went and things like that. And obviously we're in person to be able to give you more feedback. So any questions that we have on the review?
All right, and the board, you had a larger report. This is the summary.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Scott.
All right, final exam schedule. This has been a topic. This was in the parking lot when I arrived, right. So, and I think it had been parked in the parking lot for a while when I got here. So, over the past several years, we've been working on what we call common experience, curriculum work amongst course teams in each school. And during that time, there's been a shift away from cumulative final exams in many of, but not all, but many of our courses. What the challenge is right now is a final exam bell schedule seems to indicate that every teacher must fill that with a summative exam that takes 90 minutes, because that's kind of what the schedule's built to do. We'd like to recognize that many teachers, many courses have moved away from that 90-minute exam. However, some are still there.
Right.
So what we're structuring is running a regular bell schedule for the final week of the semester. We're asking our course teams that wish to give a cumulative summative exam to break that up over 2 class periods rather than changing the bell schedule for that one. Now, by doing that, we immediately are concerned about the idea of a student getting 7 exams on the last day before they head out to winter break or summer break. So in order to control and protect for that, we've built this schedule for the final week. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, if a social studies class is giving a traditional cumulative summative kind of exam experience, they can administer that on Tuesday and Thursday of that week, either both days or one of those days, and it works for the others in the Tuesday-Thursday column, and the other departments can do the same thing on Wednesday or Friday. So that should limit the number of those summative large exam test experiences that a student is getting on each day of that week. But then if teachers aren't giving a large summative, or maybe just one day, or they're doing something other than a summative exam that week, it opens up the regular amount of instructional time to do those types of activities. So it ultimately is the goal of giving teachers more flexibility in how they design their lessons for that final week of the semester. So this was under discussion for a long time. It was discussion over the summer. With the pandemic and everything going on, we wanted to wait to get back to the beginning of the school year to discuss it a little bit more with our leadership team, which we were able to do over the last couple of weeks. If you look at our published school calendar, it doesn't list final exam week, because we anticipated that we would administratively be making this change heading into the school year, but we wanted to make sure that we had enough time to process it once everybody was back. So, final week of first and second semester no longer will have an alternative bell schedule. It'll have just the regular school week schedule, and then within that, this is kind of where large summative exams, if given, would fall. Any questions from board members?
And so, I'm a longtime advocate of this. We certainly, this isn't eliminating final exams.
No.
And those cumulative things will still happen, but this gains us back instructional time.
Absolutely.
And so I saw that as a big advantage. As well, I think in a way, it kind of models a little closer to what's going on even at the college level, and then certainly aligns up more with what we're actually already doing. And so, for instance, if you got a ceramics class, it's maybe that's not the best way to do a cumulative assessment, to have a 90-minute period. So I like the flexibility that this gives in terms of how we're assessing the students, and then as well, I like the what this does for families as well. As a parent last 9 years, I've had 4 students in District 99, and in 2 of those years, three kids at once in high school, and that keeping track of what's happening that final exam week, who's got what when, is something that all families, I think, have had to manage in a way, and this now eliminates that sort of different thing that's happening, right? So maintaining that schedule is a good thing. So, and this also, I think, fits well in with something else we'll be talking about in the future, is the block schedule. We hopefully move to maybe next year. So those are my comments. Anyone else?
I just want to go on record that this wasn't a goal of mine, and I don't support this plan. I would prefer to go back to the 90-minute set exam schedule. I think it does students who are on the 4-year university trajectory a disservice. Doesn't adequately prepare them for sitting for an exam that could be fully their grade or a large portion of it. And they generally don't offer them.
what you're saying.
Can't hear what you're saying.
I'm not in favor of this. I think we should go back to the 90-minute set exam schedule. I think it's doing a disservice to students who are on the 4-year college trajectory path. I have not seen that this is how they're doing it in college, and I think that kids who don't sit for any test that's longer than 50 minutes are not as well prepared for any of the standardized tests and are not as well prepared for their college exams.
So to just provide a little feedback on that. So there will still be courses that give summatives. They will be limited to 50 minutes, of course. However, every one of our students every year does take a large version of the SAT, right? So there is the standardized test sitting for that. So this will not eliminate summative exams like what you would see in colleges, but every student currently is having a mix of summatives and not. There's just teachers filling that 90 minutes with something else or turning it into a study hall where hopefully this creates an opportunity for more productive time in that last week. And students will still get a variety of experiences. And many of our students that are involved in AP courses or dual credit courses, though, which are really college preparation courses, will still have a large traditional summative that happens at the end of those courses. So this provides a mixed opportunity, which is what they'll still see at a college setting too. Not every college class they take will have a large common summative either. But I do understand the perspective, and when we get to the bell schedule later, you'll see how next year that opportunity will be provided again. So
I do also think that kids are better prepared to perform on AP and standardized test exams when they have had an experience where they are sitting for an hour and a half. I just don't think 50 minutes prepares you for going into a 4-hour SAT or ACT type exam or a college exam. That's generally an hour and a half to 2 hours.
So if we're talking about AP specifically, I can tell you what happens with most of them is that they, especially the AP classes that occur in the second semester, the date of the AP exam typically happens before the end of the school year. And so what happens then is that they take that AP exam for the AP class they just had, and then maybe they're taking another exam in another couple of weeks, and so this I think gives them they're getting that rigorous exam for that class because that was the whole purpose of the class, right? Is to lead up to that AP exam and be prepared for it. But then this removes the requirement that in that class you're also going to have another 90-minute something at the very end when you've already had your cumulative exam for the class. And so so that's where I see this as another benefit specifically for those college preparatory classes.
I see that, but I also feel like in using my child's experience, she now has not sat for an exam since the first semester of her freshman year. And she's a junior, and now she will take AP exams in the spring, and she won't have had a lot of opportunity to be in that type of environment for that duration. So I think the AP exams work well, but I think that if you've already been through exams 4 times, you're better prepared for what type of experience it's going to bring you.
yeah, and your perspective is shared by others as well. Absolutely. I wouldn't say that everybody is, this is a topic that nobody's going to, or you're going to have 2 camps, right? And I just feel like instructionally, this is the direction that we've we're headed in for this year, and then I'll show you where we're headed for next year. All right. Any other questions? All right. All right, I'm going to bring Gina forward to discuss grant allocations, and then after that, ARP Esser allocations.
Good evening. So I want to share some information with you about our general education and EL grants. South High School receives Title I funding and operates a school-wide program, so that enables us to use those funds for all students, but we still focus a lot of those funds on at-risk students, academically at-risk students. Title II we use for professional development, and as you can see from those figures, we have been pretty much for the last 5 years holding our own with fairly similar amounts. Title III has changed a couple of years ago, where part of that went into our EBF, our evidence-based funding, but we still do get one Title III grant, a language instruction grant for our EL learners. We use that for supplies. We use that for our bilingual parent advisory council. We receive 2 CTE grants that we use to complement our programming in CTE. A lot of the courses that we've brought in front of the board in recent years, like PLTW, for example, we fund through those grants. We also receive Title IV, which we use for a variety of purposes. We're able to support our biomedical PLTW classes through Title IV, as well as our Seal of Illiteracy program. And then tonight, in just a minute or two, I will talk more about our Esser Grants. And we have received 3 Esser Grants. So any questions about our general and EL grants?
I was wondering with the Title I, it's gone down every year for the last 5 years. So why is that?
It varies from year to year, and what also varies is that many years we'll get a second allocation. The only grants that we get a second allocation for on this list are Title I, II, and IV. And sometimes with Title I, that second allocation can be anywhere between $20,000 and $100,000. So while the figure does look like it's going down, in the end, oftentimes that number is substantially higher. Those figures are, as of today, initial allocations.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Reminder, this is an action item tonight to approve. You really don't approve the grants, you approve the fact that you've been presented with what the amounts of the grants are.
We acknowledge, yes.
So part of the 3 grants that I listed on the previous slide were the Esser Grants. Those are the elementary and secondary school emergency relief grants. We received our first one earlier into the pandemic, and we used that $313,000 to buy some digital textbooks, some math programming for healthcare services, basically additional nurses, and for transportation, for some of the meal delivery that Scott just spoke about. The second Esser grant we received for just about $1.2 million, and we used that for a variety of different purposes, including a chiller at North High, our saliva screening, additional nursing, and supplies. A lot of supplies for nursing as well, sanitation, PPE, those kinds of things. The third Esser grant, which sometimes we refer to as Esser 3, but it's actually called ARP Esser, so you'll hear it referred to multiple different ways, is for almost $2.8 million. This grant has many more requirements than the first 2. One requirement is that 20% of the funds are used for learning loss. Learning loss can be defined in a variety of different ways. One of the ways they define it is after-school programming, so such as tutoring. It can be summer school, extended year, anything that relates to helping students either to recoup what they've lost or at least proceed successfully. So that tutoring after school would be an example of that. And it extends all the way until September of 2024. The other 2 grants were for much shorter time periods. The first one was about a year and dated all the way back to March 13th of 2020. The second one, I believe we had just over 2 years, and as you can see, this one dates back as well to March 13th. So wanted to share with you what we are using ARP Esser funds for, and you have heard about these already, but a lot of personnel costs, both salary and benefits, are coming out of the grant. We've talked about a lot of these positions. Summer school, for example, we use a significant amount of funding as we had more than double the amount of students that we normally would have in summer school. We've talked about our student success coordinators, additional social work, as well as our interventionists. We also used funds for, next slide please, other resources. You've heard of Paper, and Paper is our online tutoring program, 24/7, 365 days a year. We used it for more Alex courseware, that's for mathematics, as well as PPL, which we use with our transition math classes with College of DuPage, and then Math Excel, which is for our Math 3 classes. Early into the pandemic, we switched our hotspots. We needed hotspots that had more data than the ones that we were using, so we'll be funding it through ARP, as well as a lot of different tech tools like Zoom for synchronous instruction. Significant amount of supplies and materials, nursing services, and supplies for the health office, and a significant amount of PPE. And then also on October 13th, and families should have received at least one email already letting them know about October 13th, we will be administering the PSAT 10 NMSQT, which is for national merit. It is also, though, a preliminary SAT designed to prepare students for the SAT that they will take in April. This will be taken by juniors. It's for exactly the reason that was already stated. Our current juniors have not had the opportunity. Right. As freshmen, they would have taken PSAT 8-9, but it was canceled. As sophomores, they would have taken PSAT 10, yep, but it was canceled. Right. And so we feel, and we are using ARP funds to do this, that we want to give this opportunity to all of our juniors, so they will be better prepared for the test in April. They can also, that score can also qualify them for national merit, so it kind of serves a dual purpose. Some other resources that we will be using ARP for, summer school transportation, not just last summer, but this upcoming. We also, last year, we presented to the board several times about Panorama. It's a survey tool that we've been using, and we'll be doing surveys again this year. South High is creating an outdoor eating area, and that will be funded through ARP, as well as a cooling unit at North, a heating cooling unit at South, and a modulating air handler at South. So those are other kind of capital projects that will come out of the grant as well. So here we are. I'm presenting to the Board of Education. Posted on our website will be this presentation as well as a Google form with a simple question. What information would you like to share with us about our use of funds plan? And the public can go into the form and simply write a paragraph or a sentence or two even to share that information. And then, of course, we will review the feedback, reassess, and revise as needed. Any questions?
Oh, thank you. Excellent, excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, up next is the proposed new bell schedule for the 22-23 school year. I am presenting, but Gina has been doing a lot of the work on this. But just to make it quicker, we chose to do one presenter, and I got the short straw. So many have heard that for the last several years, we have been working on this idea of a hybrid block schedule. We've talked about this in many meetings, and it was supposed to be in place for this school year. However, with the pandemic and all the number of schedule changes and everything we went through last year, the overall feedback from everybody was get back to normal for this year. Normal for us is an 8-period day. What we're investigating right now is a blend of that block schedule that students operated in much of last year with our traditional 8-period day. So there'd be a combination of days where you see all of your teachers, you'd have all of your classes, and then a couple of days a week you would see half, and the other, or one day a week you would see half of your teachers and go to half your classes, but for a longer period of time. And then another day you would see the other half and then get back. So what it would kind of feel like is, this isn't with times or anything else, but this is just to visually demonstrate how the feel of the day would be. So Monday and Tuesday, you would see all of your teachers if you're a student. You go to all your classes in the normal order that you go to them in. The reason why this is Monday and Tuesday is because of the number of Mondays we have off over a school year. Our students especially will notice that there's no longer a late start on Monday. So that instructional time goes back in. So this actually gets us some time back into the schedule. So Monday and Tuesday, you see all of your classes, go to all your classes. Wednesday, you'd go to half. We move, like we did last year, the lunch periods to the outside of the day so that students could arrive later or leave earlier should their family decide that that's the right thing for them to do. And then Friday, everybody sees one another before they head off for the weekend. This type of a schedule gives the best of both worlds, where you're consistently having days where you see everybody, but a couple of days a week with longer periods of time to do longer activities, such as the summative exams that we were talking about earlier, or longer experiments, or any type of activity that would typically take longer than a regular class period. A couple other things that are built into this model are access periods, where there'd be time for, some of the time would be there so that students could get help during the day from teachers. And another one of those, or more, some of that time would be for all of those administrative, not administrative like me, but administrative tasks that happen throughout the year, whether that be getting your ID photos or registering for a class or the PBIS lessons, or there's all of these different things that happen throughout the year. Many of them students get pulled out of their English or PE classes to do these things. So those two curricular areas are always bearing the brunt of those administrative tasks, where if we carve that time out, then everybody shares in that time equally. And then the way that this rotates through is that one of those blocks naturally becomes the student's lunch period, and that would be time for a lot of the larger scale things that we do with students, which could be course planning, college planning, bringing in outside speakers or businesses in the community to present, any number of those kinds of things where there would be time rotating through the schedule for students to have those experiences. So that's the general feel of what we're looking at. Obviously, we have a lot of details and solve fors and times to add to this schedule, but this is what we talked about, oh boy, a while back ago. There's some real key benefits to making this change. We put instructional time back in because just as that student's lunch period rolls through the schedule and they have time to do what we're calling resource things, so does a staff member's lunch roll through the schedule. And where we put the professional development time Monday mornings, we put that instructional time back into the schedule, and then teachers' professional development opportunities would happen as their lunch period rolls through the schedule. So it's a creative way to put time back into the schedule and still accomplish all of the goals that we need to do. Students would be able to get, we'd have time set aside where students can get help from teachers during the school day. Something we commonly hear from students is that they're involved in athletics, activities, they're working, they have family responsibilities before or after the school day. So we're trying to create pockets of time where during that day, students can get help from teachers. And then we'll still have our office hours and all of those kinds of things outside of the school day, but we want to make sure that students can get help during the day. We talked about that 1 day a week for a longer class period, extended learning activities. The idea is that within this, within the lunch periods, within the block periods, within the access periods, students have also access to counseling and student support services to get help in those areas. We talked about the professional learning, and then the idea of aspects of college and workplaces. One of the things that we hear commonly from students when they go off to college or to work is that we've been managing their time for 4 years, and now suddenly they're responsible for managing their time. And that is one of the biggest executive functioning skills that we hear that students that leave us struggle with. Like, they're way above par academically, and we hear that all the time, but they had trouble managing like their free time and how that structure of time works. So the change this year of moving from half of a lunch period to a full lunch period provides a little window of that. And we want to provide a couple more opportunities of that throughout the school day, where they get to manage their time like they will as an adult, but they're still under the protection of us, right? And we're still looking out for them and making sure that they're going where they're supposed to go and, behaving appropriately and those kinds of things. So this is more about prep for post-secondary in the way that this schedule works as well. A lot of details still, a lot of solve fors. This presentation raises more questions than it provides answers. We do have a group of students and families coming together in the next couple of weeks to give us feedback on this. We have many committees working on the details around this, and we'll be filling in those details in the coming months. Really, this is the timeline. And we are in this, here we are in September, finalizing the prototype. Over the next 2 months, we'll finalize that, communicate it, and then seek approval from the board in November. We want to have that schedule approved before students select courses and we build schedules. Although this shouldn't restrict anything in any way, because it's still built around an 8-period day. Like, that's the base structure. So it's just a couple of days. Time shifts around. We shift time around all the time for different assembly schedules or whatever. I mean, students are used to what schedule is today. That this really won't change that fundamentally, course selection, but we just want people to make choices knowing what the next year will look like. And then next August it'll go into effect, and then we'll evaluate each year and see if there's any tweaks or changes that we need to make in it, and just get better year after year. So any questions on that?
I think if it adds more instructional time.
I can't hear you, Terry. Can you pull the microphone up?
I know. I accused you guys of the same thing. I couldn't hear you. If it adds more instructional time for our students, then I'm all for it, and I really think that that's a really good opportunity. I just don't want any of our professional development to be left behind because of it, because I think that reflects onto our students also. So just make sure that you're evaluating that portion of it too.
Yep, this is a creative way to make sure we accomplish both those goals.
Okay.
I just have an overarching observation. Seems to me that our preliminary work on this pre-pandemic helped to inform how to put our hybrid schedule together this last year, and now that experience through that is helping to inform what we're doing going forward. So my confidence level in this is going to be even higher because of what we've learned. And then next year's juniors and seniors, there'll be something, this will be familiar to them because of what they experienced last year. So all in all, this is something we'd hope to get going this year. I'm glad that we're on course to get it in place for next year. And this too, all those things you said, in terms of preparing for the next level. I mean, even our students who are going on to, not to college, but to trade school or the work environment, learning how to plan your day and is an important tool, and it seems so second nature to all of us, but it's something that they need to learn to do. We've experienced it a little bit this year with our daughter. Went off to college, and there's been a couple things just sort of like, you got to figure that out, honey. So this is I think going to be so beneficial to our students and more instructional time. Kudos. Looking forward to see this come to fruition.
I have two questions. Are you done, Mike? I had two questions. One is, and I realize that this is a mock-up, not finalized. Is there any reason, why would we split between on Wednesdays and Thursdays, just in this example, on Wednesdays and Thursdays, we have two classes that we split for lunch? It looks like maybe like...
Yeah, I'll go back to that. It's a little, it's in the details of how that works. So the lunch block there in the middle of the day on the hybrid, you're only seeing one of the lunch periods.
Right.
So you have to break that period into 3 chunks.
Okay.
So a third of your building will start that period with lunch. A third of the building will have the middle split by lunch, and a third of the building will have it at the end of that period for lunch. So there's really, within that class period, a block of class time and a block of lunch time. And where that sits kind of rotates between classes.
This was a sample.
This is one student sample. Yeah.
It wouldn't be the same group of students all the time who had their class interrupted. It would...
It could be. Yeah, it could be one class that's scheduled that way, but there's certain classes like PE that you wouldn't schedule because they need to dress. You're not going to have them come in from PE or driver's ed or those kinds of things. So there's some classes that would be eligible to have it split and some that wouldn't.
Okay.
We could also allow some classes the ability to flex that. So if you're in a chem lab, like typically a science class would not have the split because you have labs that you're trying to build in time to do 90-minute college level labs, right? Or 80-minute or whatever, extended college level labs. So typically you wouldn't schedule a break like that in the middle of a science class. Although there is labs every so often where you need to do half of it and then allow things to cool or filter or whatever. So this would provide the flexibility for that teacher to go to the administration and say, hey, for this class this day, I need to flip my lunch schedule around because it makes sense instructionally to do that. So we would have a certain amount of leeway where we could flex that time and space to make it work instructionally rather than something that you're planning around.
Thank you. And then my other question, really, I know you're going to have students and parents comment on this, but we still have relatively new student members, and I just want to make sure
I'm sorry,
if they had any questions or comments.
Nancy's asking if our new students might have some comments about
Or
this.
questions? No? Okay.
I think it works. I like it. I think it's a best of both worlds, which was nice about having hybrid last year and going back to the 8 periods this year. So I think the students will like it. We'll see how it works.
Yeah, I agree with Scarlett on what she's saying. And I know, like, when we met a couple weeks ago, we really talked through, like, the fine details. And now looking at it, I really understand why this is probably the best option to go with our first year doing this. So I think it will work.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, Hank, we're not like reinventing the wheel here
No,
either. Really.
this has been done
something
elsewhere.
lots of others.
Yeah.
So this isn't some novel idea that I just wanted to get that out there too.
No, we're not.
Yeah.
We're not inventing some brand new idea here.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if it works and it's brilliant, you can go ahead and give me credit for that. But it
Right.
isn't. All right. 5-year financial projection. I'm going to invite Mark.
Yeah, not me.
Looking at Mike, saying Mark. Invite Mark to go through the 5-year financial projection here.
Yeah, so many of you are familiar with the format that we've been using in the district. I've been using it for more than 20 years now, so it's kind of built up to having a lot of little pieces to it, but there's really 4 or 5 key parts to our financial projections that we use. And I need to say that this is the projection really is the top of the budget cycle. We look at this and where the forecast leaves us going forward, and it's up to the administration to make sure we make this work, make it or better. So it is a fairly conservative view, meaning that we should outperform what we are putting in here. But there's some key factors that we can't change. The first one being CPIU, which governs the increase in our taxes each year is limited to the increase in CPIU for existing assessed valuations, and it's a very difficult number to project. So I have a couple graphs to show you just to let you see how we project the CPI going forward. We know that the CPI for this current fiscal year 21-22 is 2.3%. We know that the following year it's down to 1.4% because that was the 2020 CPI, and that goes forward. So that the 2020 CPI governs the amount of levy increase in the following year, and then we get the taxes the year after that. So we have a pipeline, and we purposely work this way so that we have lead time knowing where a key part of our revenues are going to be going forward. Also, we tie most of our contracts, the employment contracts, the collective bargaining agreements, and major contracts like transportation and food services to CPI increases. So that way we get a handle and a control on our expenditures. So CPI is the number one key to starting this kind of a projection. And we have a couple really unique things. We have some expiring TIFs, which really, I call them safety nets that we have built into our system. I was the controller here when we went into both of these TIFs, the Ogden TIF and the Woodridge TIF, and also, actually there's two Downers Grove TIFs, one for the downtown area, one for Ogden Avenue, and a Janes Avenue TIF for Woodridge, which is maturing as well. And I was supportive of that when we got into them, because really it didn't hurt us financially like some people thought it might, but it also produces this positive thing way down the road, and it's maturing now for us. And it couldn't be a better time, because we had a bad year last year with actually the first time we've seen a significant negative in our operations. And largely because of the pandemic. There were things that just didn't happen. There were costs that spiraled up. Busing had to happen even though we weren't busing kids. A lot of crazy things that happened last year. But these TIFs are significant, and I'll show you. You can see on this exhibit. I'll just read it to you. The Woodridge Janes Avenue TIF is going to give us $430,000 more estimated in property taxes, because the construction that occurred to make Janes Avenue area upgraded, improved the property values, and we didn't get access to it for 23 years and actually 24 the way this one worked. And now we get access to that one-time hit of new construction that's been put off for 23 years. The Downers Grove Downtown TIF in 2022-23 will actually do the same thing. We'll get access to property values that have been increasing over the last 23 years that we've not been able to access. But we will be able to get it in 22-23, and that'll generate approximately $1 million to $1.1 million more in taxes. And so that's a positive. Again, that's a safety net that we have in our system.
Quick question. Have you done any analysis to look at if the TIF hadn't happened, how does this differ from what we would have seen if the TIF hadn't happened? Because the goal of the TIF...
You have to believe that and actually I think the Downers Grove TIF was one of those where a lot of times they start a TIF and they say it's a blighted area, and it's not so much. We have one in Oak Brook on Myers Road for a TIF that they say is blighted. It's a very loose, there's other criteria for it. Downers Grove, I think, was a perfect example of needing a TIF because the property values were dropping.
They were.
And because of the way the tax caps come into play, we get CPI increase on whatever tax caps are. We weren't able to put it on that property, but all the other taxpayers in our taxing district paid a tiny bit more for that piece that was restricted from us. And so over 23 years, it has, I think it was a high-performing TIF. It was really good for the community. I think the schools, I know 58 had a different opinion about how to run it or allow it, but I think we handled it well. So here and it's right when we need it, because you'll see when we get to the financial side of this, the comparisons, revenue and expenditures, it's going to help us quite a bit. And the third is the Ogden Avenue TIF. We won't see any real money from that until 26, 27, but that's in the pipeline. And it's a smaller one, probably $500,000 or so. And I know I talk about $500,000 in MLs like it's nothing, but we have a $105 million revenue and expenditure budget in this district. And I'm really proud to say we have the second lowest high school tax rate in DuPage County. Only one other school, and they have 1.5 times more EAV than we do, and $150 million budget. So I'm really proud of that, and the TIF helped us to get that by getting those other properties. Now the whole community benefits from those properties being raised in value.
That's my belief as well. Yeah.
Another, I guess the third piece of it is kind of an optional piece for us, is in the middle of there's a capital outlay. And we've been using between $1.2 and $1 million a year for each of the schools to share for projects that come up. And it would be many of the things that we've just covered with the master facility plan. So we kind of trimmed it back to $1 million. And this projection assumes that we start to get things going again, and we can start to even increase it past $1.2 to $1.3 million. If things weren't going to go well in the economy or something changed in this forecast, we might have to trim it back. That's one of those variables. We might trim it back to $1 million because we did so much work. But we have a list of things. There's still classrooms that we like to update. There's still things that we can do at both schools to really finish this job off. FTE changes, and it isn't very much, isn't projected. We use an outside expert for providing us projections of enrollment. His name is John Casarda. He's widely used in Illinois by other schools, and he's generally pretty close. I mean, the last time he gave us this, I think, was maybe 2020 or 2019. And so we were about 13 kids off of his projection district-wide. So we used his projections, and that doesn't fluctuate a lot, which is a good thing. But if it did fluctuate, at one point in time we had the last master facility plan is because we were going to hit 6,000 kids in a school that was made for 4,500 over the two schools. So that's why we had that other growth and project in the early 2000s. The last thing is the Esser and Arp Funds. We're kind of taking it off the projection right now because a lot of the revenue that we get is going to come with strings attached. It's for things that we wouldn't normally be doing. We think when it's all said and done, we might be offsetting maybe $1 million worth of our expenses that we would be incurring anyways, but the other maybe $2 to $3 million, and it could be less. The ISB is fairly well known for giving us very little information about what the criteria is to make something eligible for the grant, and then over time tightening it up and then changing it. And so now things that we thought we could use the grant for really don't go. And so we're being very cautious with the Esser money. It goes up until September of '24, so it's the last one. So we're going to be very careful about how we apply that. But right now we're leaving it off the table both on the expenditures and revenue side. So if the next piece, the next graph is the revenue and expenditure. Oh, yeah, we got a couple of graphs so I can show you the CPI. This is the 10-year history of CPI. Most recent one was for 2020, and it was 1.4%, fairly low. But we've had it as low as 0.1% of 1% historically. And the 10-year average is 1.7%. The 5-year average is 1.9%. We use that 1.9% for most of the outgoing years that we don't know the exact amounts yet. We already know the CPI for next couple years because it's happened. 1.4 is what we have for the next year. But going forward, we use 1.9. But if we go to the next slide, we have an exception this year. The the green line, I track the CPI on a monthly basis. I've been doing this since 2008. And just to get an idea of where that's going, so we know if we're on line with our projections and how that might change things in our future if it starts coming in at a higher or low level. This is getting, as of August, it's up to 5.3. If I've got that, I can't see it myself, but and if it just stays at the same level, CPI is a factor of a basket of goods, they call it, certain things, and every month they go and check out and reprice that basket of goods to see if it costs more or if it went down, costs less. And so if we use the factor from August of what for that basket of goods and just drag it forward and say it's not going to change, we'd hit 5% in CPI, which would be the only time we've hit 5% was the very first year in 1991 when they started the tax caps, and it was 6%, and it was then our increase was capped at 5%. And again, the history is much lower, and really if you go back 20 years, it's probably about 2% is what the CPI has been over a longer period of time. But this is really unusual. And so in the revenue side of the projection, we used 4.5%. I think it could hit 5% and be capped, but 4.5% is a conservative estimate, in my opinion. The next key thing, and actually, as we looked at the line that's, you see, we see where it's yellow, change in operating fund balance, and you jump up 2 lines. That's the excess revenues or expenditures. That's the key line for us. And you can look at this, that the current year, it's roughly $1,000 down. It really, we could have said 0 for the amount that means to our budget, but it came out when we took all the accounts, revenue and expenditure accounts, $1,000 as a deficit. The next line below that are transfers to other funds, and those are paying for some debt certificates that we issued to renovate the campuses and do some HVAC work at our other campus. And we've been paying, we did that rather than increase taxes. By having this paid out of our operating funds, we didn't issue special taxes and then have the community's tax rate go up. We did it internally. We cut revenue, cut expenditures in the educational fund and building funds so that we could fund this debt that we built. It was a $9 million, $10 million bond. And we're paying it off every year, and it'll be paid off this year. So that's a $2 million change in our net results that's going to fall off of our budget next year, and that gets us back into the black. But we're going to have a couple of years in there that we're going to be pretty tight, but this one helps us immensely. So that transfer that we made from our operating funds to the debt service fund to pay the debt service won't be here, and as we go forward, there's other things that are falling off. We've been paying, we're leasing our Chromebooks, which is another form of debt, and that's about $350,000 to $400,000 a year. That's falling off. We funded those internally without going to a lease this year. We paid for them directly instead of leasing it. Interest rates, are so low that we just decided it wasn't worth paying the 2 to 3% interest that they wanted on the lease, and we wanted to get it off of this transfer list going forward because it's going to be there every year from now on. So those are the things that fall off on that transfer line, and that makes a big difference. The bottom line for us long term is to look at the very bottom row, and that is the percent of revenue. That's what people would call our fund balance reserve level. And for us, we have a limit. It has to be at least 4% on the modified accrual basis method, or it has to be 33% if we're on the cash basis. And I won't get into that too much, but there's 2 different measurement ways to measure. And we'll be keeping this at 11%. And the lowest it will get to is 7.5%. So we're going to be in the safe zone for us. And we've been able to operate with a level about 4 to 5% for 15 to 20 years. And I think we can continue to do that. And this gives us more than double that, and most of those years. And again, this is fairly conservative. I think there's some of the operations like I think CPI could be higher than 1.9 the last few years. But that's just using a 5-year average, so things like that. So that's what we're doing with this as a 5-year projection. This is the starting point for the budget. If the board is uncomfortable about this or wants a change, we would want to know in the next month or so, because we start doing, the changes throughout the whole system. We hire people based on need, based on the pupil to teacher ratio that we have. We want to keep the things that we have good, consistent, and we need to start planning that now. And then rather than hearing this in January, and when it would really be hard to make any changes at that point.
So any questions for Mark?
No. Thank you once again for keeping us in good stead.
Okay. Thank you for the people that said they couldn't hear me. I hope you could hear me this time, because I was trying to talk right into this. Thank you for letting me know.
All right, just a couple of clerical items. We're required to report to the board that we post a report to our website each year. It has been posted. Master Facility Plan progress. We're hitting the end of the Master Facility Plan budget, as well as the entire project. So at this point, we're starting to reconcile all of the accounts. We had hoped that we would be reporting at this point to the board that we had $300,000 to $400,000 left in contingency if everything over the summer went absolutely perfect. It didn't, of course. I mean, there was a lot of work going on. So right now we're sitting at about $50,000 remaining in contingency. That's probably pretty close to where we'll end up. We do have a remaining furniture, fixture, and equipment allowance, although much of that we know is already allocated for expenses that are just waiting for certain spaces to be buttoned up, so then we can move furniture into them or equipment into them. This is pretty close to where we'll end up. We'll work on this, and all of the accounts Mark is going through them line by line, and we'll make sure that everything is cleared on this account sometime here before January 1st. And then we'll bring to the board a final accounting of not only all of the money, but of all of the projects that we accomplished, and things that at the beginning I would have told you there was no way we would get to that inside of this plan, that through some creative construction and efficiencies, we were able to get more than what we thought we were going to be able to at the beginning. Questions on finances? So on time and on budget, that's what we always like to report. Last week we had, or not Saturday, the Saturday before that, we had the ribbon cutting ceremony here at South, which was a great event. We had an open house from 9 a.m. till 2 p.m. and over that course of time, over 900 people came and visited South High to see the project. Lots of excited folks, a lot of alumni coming back, just really excited. It was fun to talk to a lot of them as they marked their term at South High by what the building looked like at the time, like what wings were here and what was added, and so it was great to visit with all of those folks. And then coming up Saturday this week is the same type of ceremony over at North High. So a ribbon cutting ceremony at 9 a.m. Following that with an open house from 9:30 till 2, and a great opportunity to just, whether you're stopping by to just walk in and see the commons or the new gym, or if you want to just walk the whole building and see all of the changes, this is a great opportunity for the community. All right, any questions on Master Facility Plan? FOIAs, we've received them, we've responded to them, and they're on our website. All right, and that's it for Superintendent's reports.
We'll move on to the consent agenda then. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes the personnel report, appointments certified, leave of absence certified, transfer of position classified, appointments classified, salary increase exempt, and rate increases substitutes, the personnel report, retirement certified, resignations classified, and the financial pages.
So moved.
I'll second.
Terry and Mike.
Thank you very much. Terry Pavicic.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Christopher Espinoza.
Aye.
Cheryl Fuller.
Aye.
Jenny Hagstrom.
Aye.
Joanna Vasquez Drexler.
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye. The consent agenda carries. Next, we need a motion for the Board of Education to approve the 2021-2022 budget as presented.
So moved.
Second. Oh, go ahead, Joanne.
Mike, and I didn't hear.
Joanna.
Mike and Joanna.
Thank you very much. Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Joanna Vasquez Drexler.
Aye.
Christopher Espinoza.
Aye.
Cheryl Fuller.
Aye.
Jenny Hagstrom.
Aye.
Terry Pavicic.
Aye.
And Nancy Kupka.
Aye, the motion carries. Next, we need a motion for the Board of Education to approve the 2021-2022 grants as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Mike and Joanna?
Joanna.
Joanna, thank you. Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Joanna Vasquez Drexler.
Aye.
Christopher Espinoza.
Aye.
Cheryl Fuller.
Aye.
Jenny Hagstrom.
Aye.
Terry Pavicic.
Aye.
And Nancy Kupka.
Aye, and the motion carries.
Thank you.
Moving on to old business, we have we've had some comment about this already, so if anybody wants to talk about it a little bit more, let's do so from the board perspective. But this is a motion for the Board of Education to approve Board Policy 2.230, public participation at school board meetings as presented.
So moved.
I'll second.
Is that Terry?
Yeah,
Was
Terry.
me.
Terry and
Terry
Mike.
So can we have some discussion?
Sure.
Because I have an amendment I wanted to propose. And then just a couple comments. First, I think, Policy Committee met about this and are recommending approval of this. One of the things that I liked about it was the fact that it although it appears to be a lot longer, what we're really seeing here is bringing forward, Board Policy 8.30, visitors to and conduct on school property. So it avoids the reader from having to go back and look at another part of the policy to figure out what we're referring there. So and it states clearly how we interpret Board Policy 8.30 in terms of conduct at our meetings. Also, it effectively makes clear what a lot of our precedent has been for the last several years. And I think that clarity is something I would think would be appreciated by the public. And then, but one change I do want to suggest is that in the very first sentence where it says the board will allocate up to 30 minutes, I'd like to change the up to at least. I think we're talking about a planning situation here, how much time we're preparing to allocate to this. And I think it's reasonable for the public to be able to come in and go, okay, I know at least 30 minutes has been set aside for this. In fact, our practice has been to do this. And in fact, at many meetings, we've gone well beyond the 30 minutes. And we, of course, reserve the right to do so. But I think setting the expectation that we're going to plan for at least 30 minutes to be there, I think is a reasonable thing to do. And so I would suggest that change and would ask that, so do I need to make a motion that we
Actually,
amend?
Terry would have to amend her motion to change.
Yes, I'm.
Would you accept my proposed change?
Yes, I do.
And then you'd have to agree with it as the second.
I agree with it.
Okay.
Gee.
Any other changes that anybody would like to recommend or discuss?
No.
Cheryl, any comments?
No, I'm okay with at least 30 minutes.
Okay.
So that I know we went over this and.
It was something that occurred to me after our meeting, and in fact, I just to bear witness to the fact that we do read emails that are sent to us. I received an email about this today that spoke to something I had thought about earlier in the day as I was going back rereading this for tonight. So anyhow, that's where we're at. So can we call the question then?
So the change would be, the only change as proposed would be the board will allocate at least 30 minutes during each regular and special open meeting during which blah, blah, blah.
Correct.
Okay. Anybody else have a comment? Okay, let's take a vote on the policy as amended.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Christopher Espinoza.
Aye.
Sherelle Fuller.
Aye.
Jenny Hagstrom.
Aye.
Joanna Vasquez Drexler.
Aye.
And Nancy Kupka.
Aye, the amended policy passes. Okay, moving on to the reception of visitors' public comment. This is the second reception of visitors, which is intended for audience members to address the board on any topic pertaining to Community High School District 99. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes to provide all visitors an equal opportunity to address the board. Individuals needing more time should submit their thoughts in writing to the board secretary, Mrs. Nidak. Visitors addressing the board need to submit a comment slip to the board secretary and will be invited to the microphone. Prior to addressing the board, audience members should state their full name. These proceedings are being tape recorded for the purpose of producing accurate meeting minutes as well as being live streamed. The board's presiding officer, which is me, reserves the right to modify these protocols if circumstances warrant. Audience participation of these protocols is appreciated. How many do we have?
We have 10, so we should be fine in the time allocated.
We also have a little time from first person.
All right, that's just a review of the guidelines that were up earlier. The first slip I have is for Marianne Vasquez.
Hi, I'm Marianne Vasquez, and I'm here to support the board because I believe you have displayed exemplary leadership during this time, especially you, Hank, during the pandemic, and you, Nancy, with the work you've done. I feel that many of you who ran for office did not sign up to be barraged by individuals bringing topics that are totally irrelevant to the school process. Most of what has been brought before the board and taken up your time for really handling what needs to be done on a daily basis has been nonsense, divisive, and is destructive to our community. I also believe in the area of masking. You have been supportive. You did not fight against the mask mandates, which are so important to a community. You are the Community District Board of Education, and you represent that community. And that community also includes every individual in it. A student probably won't die of COVID, but his parent may go into a hospital. The average bill for a person going into the hospital is $1,700. And if you're like the 33-year-old son of a coworker of mine, he and his wife walked out of the ICU with a $250,000 bill. That is destructive to a community and to a family. Therefore, I appreciate your efforts on that behalf. And I also do not like the idea that community board members are being encouraged to resign. One today on social media. You are entitled to take off a meeting if you have COVID or you have a death in the family. That's entirely expected that something like that would occur. And that individual was called out to quit. And Nancy Kupka, don't you dare think about letting these people bully you into leaving. You have been a great president, and if they don't recognize it, it's them.
Thank you.
Rich Brennan. Rich Brennan.
I'm Rich Brennan, a Downers Grove resident. Parental rights don't end at the schoolhouse door. Wake Up D99 supports parents, teachers, staff, and students who disagree with inappropriate curriculum, assignments, and bias in the classroom. Parental rights extend to the classroom where national sex education standards may be adopted, as in Illinois Senate Bill 818, signed by Governor Pritzker. This school board obediently relies on state and national standards, regardless of community preference. 62% of Illinoisans oppose comprehensive sex ed, including pro-choice Democrats. NSES would destroy local control over curriculum to sexually groom students by introducing sensitive, inappropriate, and pornographic topics. Schools should not be instructing students in the 6th grade and continuing into high school about oral and anal sex. Parents know best when their children are ready and mature enough to be taught sexually explicit material. If the D99 school board respects parental rights, its policy will provide for full disclosure of all sex education materials to parents in advance, and will not force parents to opt out, but will allow parents who choose to have their children taught these sensitive subjects to opt in, thereby avoiding peer pressure and coercion to push the national sex education standards agenda. SB 818 is an all or nothing proposition. A local district opts all in or all out. We have asked D99 to opt out. However, the board has indicated that it will not opt out. To support parents, faculty, staff, and students, Wake Up D99 has established a new anonymous hotline to voice your concerns in complete confidence. We will follow up on all calls to 630-909-3496. Go to www.wakeupd99.com for more information. Any questions? Thank you.
Stephanie Trussell. Stephanie Trussell.
My name is Stephanie Trussell. Thank you for allowing me to speak. In 1994, my family fled Chicago after several attempts to get our children into a magnet school. We didn't want to keep paying for private school. In Chicago, your zip code dictates the school your children are assigned to. Our neighborhood schools were not that great. I was told by loved ones not to move to DuPage County because not enough people looked like me. They said we would never fit in. One of the best decisions we ever made was not to follow that advice. We chose DuPage County because the schools were top rated and they were accessible to every child, no matter race, color, ethnicity, or class. We didn't have to know someone to get our kids into the good schools. Our two school-aged children were 7 and 9. They quickly made friends and assimilated. When I would hear about a kid getting into Benedictine University, I would think the kid must be really smart and the parents must be rich. Fast forward to 2005 when our daughter was awarded a full academic scholarship to Benedictine University where she would get her master's. My eldest was even prom king. All my children have had the privilege of being educated in high quality schools. They were held to the same standards as their peers. I must believe that back then, they were not told that all white people were contributing to racism. I also must assume that they weren't treated like their skin tone would put them at a disadvantage. My children are ages 36 to 16. My 4 older children graduated prepared for their next step in life. I consider all my children well educated, and I even occasionally roll my eyes when my 2 grammar police correct my English. All my adult children are gainfully employed. With this trending CRT climate, I worry that some teachers will tell my 16-year-old what it means to be a black man in America in 2021. I don't want anyone to tell him that his dad is inherently the oppressor and his mom is the hopeless victim. Current students shouldn't be taught that one group has privilege over another. As Americans, we all have privilege over everyone else in the world. We live in the greatest country on the planet. Like every society, there's ugliness in our history. When we knew better, America did better. Blacks excelled from the slave house to the White House because we did what most Americans do. We embraced our country and decided to overcome whatever adversities we faced. What ethnic group hasn't faced some kind of discrimination at some point? Other groups didn't become permanent victims. I reject the BLM, the CRT narrative that whites have privilege over me, or the thought that systemic racism has held me back. Trust me, my family and I live a very good life. We are living the American dream in DuPage County, beautiful DuPage County. I want to if you want to help black students achieve success, treat them like you treat every other student. Address them accordingly to the content of their character, not as a group based on the color of their skin.
Marcella Chevroux.
My name is Marcella Durdick-Charay, and I've been a district resident for 25 years. I've mentioned here before that I've spent 20 years researching threats against children via public health initiatives and the sinister role that schools play when crossing the line from education to medical intervention. Dr. Thiele, last month you spoke proudly as you showed pictures of masked students on the first day of school. What I witnessed in those slides was child abuse and what will likely set precedent for more criminal action at the hands of school boards everywhere. I've been down this road before, this casting aside of parental authority and justification for doing so by absolving yourselves of any responsibility by pretending your hands are tied. There's nothing new here. COVID has simply provided everyone a repackaged, rebranded, jacked up on steroids reason to further deceive, coerce, and control. You see, at one point, this school, this educational institution, wasn't going to allow my child to enroll because of a certain health policy. She did enroll, only to be told 4 years later that she wouldn't be allowed to graduate because of a newly revised health policy. The rules had changed, but the motive had not. Notice any parallels to what's happening today? Years prior, NAMI, an AstroTurf organization and a puppet of the pharmaceutical industry, was allowed to come to your feeder schools to conduct mental health screenings with no notice to parents and without requiring informed consent under a commission put forth by presidential executive order. Screening, informed consent, executive order. Do these words sound familiar in today's COVID climate? And lastly, the pseudo-doctors, AKA the teachers and administrators of those feeder schools, felt compelled to threaten me on a regular basis because they wanted to medicalize childhood rather than focus on the educational needs of my child. I was told time and time again that DCFS would be called to forcibly remove my children and that I would be thrown in jail for being a negligent mother because I didn't take your medical advice. The harassment was relentless. Only when I threatened legal action did it stop. Like today, it was medical tyranny at the hands of the very people entrusted to educate our children. Members of the board, our children are not wards of the state, and parents aren't speaking out because they're looking for their 15 minutes of fame. We know you won't bite the hands that feed you, but this is on you. You're the low levels in the web of corruption taking place today, so you'll be the first ones we'll go after when these children become ill, and your governor, nor ISB, nor IDPH will save you.
Larissa Calvarese.
Hi, so my name is Larissa Calvanese. I live in Downers Grove. And I just wanted to read to you some information that was given to us because students and parents don't feel safe enough to come speak forward to teachers and administration. They have been reaching out to D99. And just to summarize the email, it says, I'm attaching these slides to you that I took of my students' homework in 2017. I held on to them because I was bothered by this assignment, especially from an English teacher. I wanted to, and we have the name, but I'm not going to say it. I wanted to contact the teacher directly, but my student pleaded with me not to for fear of losing their good grade. So now here I am several years later, and all of this is coming to a head. My student still does not want to be put in the spotlight about this. And with my husband's job, Again, we're going to withhold that. It says, I am hesitant to put myself or him in that position, so you could please share this with me. So these slides are available on our D99 website, so you could see the examples of them. Now I'm just going to read them real quickly, what the slides, well, I guess I'm not supposed to talk to you, said. Mind you, this was, I guess, from an English class in 2017. It says, privilege gives advantages, favors, and benefits to members of dominant groups at the expense of members of target groups. And I'm just wondering why teachers can't please just see students as individuals instead of putting them in groups. The second slide said, privilege. In the United States, privilege is granted to people who have membership in one or more of the social identity groups: white people, able-bodied people, heterosexuals, males, Christians, owning or middle-class people, middle-aged people, English-speaking people. Like this is CRT, and this is shaming students sitting there in their class in front of other students. And I'm just wondering, this was done in 2017, and you said CRT's never been done before, so is this teacher disobeying like the rules, or was this, or is this before you weren't teaching CRT? This slide is probably what bothered me the most. Privilege is characteristically invisible to people who have it. People in dominant groups often believe that they have earned the privileges that they enjoy, or that everyone could have access to these privileges if only they worked to earn them. In fact, privileges are unearned, and they are granted to people in dominant groups, whether they want those privileges or not. And what people need to understand is individuals work hard to aspire to the goals they want to achieve. And that's not privilege. That is called earning the sweat from your brow. Last target, unlike targets of oppression, people in dominant groups are frequently unaware that they are members of dominant groups due to the privilege of being able to see themselves as persons rather than stereotypes. Just like you stereotyped some people there on that slide. But so I'm just asking you to please teach your teachers to see students as individuals and not members of one group or another. You say you're not teaching CRT, but teachers are being divisive by applying the principles of CRT.
Mary Lemansky. Mary Lemansky.
Hi, I'm Mary Lemansky. I'm a Downers Grove resident. I wanted to first thank the school board. Your positions are not easy ones. You have to balance all input and find solutions that are not driven by emotion or personal beliefs, but the demands of your constituents. And I applaud you for keeping our kids safe. My son is a freshman at North, and this is kind of my first experience his whole life with public school. I did not go to public school myself. I grew up going to Catholic school, and personally I think my education suffered in ways as I was gifted and the Catholic school only had so many resources. However, one thing I do remember is learning about notable Black Americans throughout grade school. And in Catholic high school, we delved into what life as a slave was like. And if you think masks are oppressive, you should look at slavery. We also learned in high school, it was a Catholic high school, we learned about LGBTQ before it was even called LGBTQ. Even though it went against Catholic teachings, they still taught us about it because they wanted us to be well-rounded, educated adults. Knowledge is power. And with that, I leave you some facts. 1 in 8 Americans has been infected by COVID. 1 in 61 Americans has died from COVID. Of people that are vaccinated, 1 in 13,402 get COVID. So you have 1 in 8 on one side, or 1 in 13,402 of getting it. Of the people who are vaccinated, you have a 1 in 86,500 chance of dying if you are vaccinated. That's 1 in 61 compared to 1 in 86,500. So I have another thing real quick. A CDC study found that mask mandates were associated with a 0.5% point decrease in daily COVID-19 case growth rates within the first 20 days of the mandate, and the reduction in growth rates increased with time, reaching 1.8% within 81 to 100 days after the mandate was put into effect. So thank you for following the science. That's it.
Jonathan Fisher.
Good evening, board and superintendent. Get this thing fixed here. Just got a couple observations to make. I was at the last, this is my third meeting, and at the last one they had the budget, which I thought was pretty interesting. I did notice that the teachers' pay went up 3%, and their pensions went up 7%. And I'm just wondering why the pension expenditure went up so much. Maybe you could tell.
If you'd like to reach out to me with a question, you can email me or give me a call and we can talk through it. This is for us to hear your perspective.
I got you. Well, that's my question, you know. Another was that...
Would you put your mask up, please?
When I do that, my glasses fog up.
Well, I know. Ours do too.
We need you to wear your mask properly, sir.
I can't read. I just got some notes here, so...
I will restart his clock. We need you to wear your mask appropriately.
But if you put
or
your,
you and I can make a time to discuss.
Oh, I can't really do it because my glasses fog up. I can't read.
If you put your glasses on top of your mask, they won't fog up.
Yeah, the rest of us are doing it.
Just like this. Perfect.
I'll restart your clock.
Okay. I noticed that at the last meeting that the superintendent was saying that we consulted with the lawyers in regard to the governor's mask mandate. I wonder in that consultation if you consulted with how you could give pushback to it. That would be a good question for you to consider. Or was it just strictly, let's go along with what he says? A lot of school districts have done that. And I think it'd be wise for us to begin to realize we've got to get out of this situation that we're in. This constant mask wearing, this tremendous emphasis on vaccines and not treatments, I think is wrong. Some other things I'd like to mention. You know, the idea that the sexual teaching that's taken place in schools regarding promiscuity, homosexuality, and this gender fluidity, I want to tell you, it's sin. It's not a matter of right, it's not a matter of what we'd like to do, it is sin. Number two, CRT. Now I know that you've denied that you're doing it, but to me, CRT is racist and wrong. The COVID science that you're all relying on, you spent a lot of time tonight talking about what you're going to do, how to respond to this COVID situation. Seems like you're spending a lot of time and effort on that. I wonder how much that costs us. You know, this COVID information that you've got, we just heard some fake news now. It's not all right. There's a lot of back and forth on this. There's a lot of changes by the CDC. There's a lot of information that's contradicting what's going on before. And I would say we'd be wise to be aware of that. So, COVID science is kind of fluid. And one more thing. You know, when people make requests that are reasonable, I think it's wise for the board to listen to them and attempt to work with them. I've heard a couple that have taken place. The last one was at the last meeting where they talked about the, the masks. And the question was asked, could you be specific in your guidebook about making it masks and not just PPE? Well, I don't think that's an unreasonable request. If you just leave it general like PPE, it could mean a whole bodysuit. Thank you.
Thank you. Eileen Breyer. Eileen Briner.
Eileen Briner. I'm a Downers Grove resident. Good evening. Since 2017, English language arts, math, and science are sliding backwards in District 99. This is a failure that should be very concerning to the entire community. Anyone can go to IllinoisReportCard.com and see the percentage decline from 2017 to 2019. To live in a diverse, interdependent society, we need students educated in English language arts, math, and science. I recommend that you stop spending time and money on social engineering and work on the basics. And that will be better for all of us, the students and the community.
Paul Drabick. Paul Drabick.
Hello, my name is Paul Drabick. America is unique for many reasons. Most significantly, the Constitution specifically protects the sovereignty of the individual. And yet, we now find curriculum in our schools teaching the exact opposite. For example, quote, in the United States, privilege is granted to people who have membership in one or more of these social identity groups: white people, able-bodied people, heterosexuals, males, Christians, middle or owning class people, middle-aged people, English-speaking people, end quote. That would be like me suggesting all District 99 school board members, including the superintendent, are anti-American racist bigots who manipulate children by supporting Marxist propaganda, dividing individuals by skin color, and sexualization of children. But I would never say that. That would be an ignorant, sweeping generalization. I coach children in baseball, 11 and 12-year-olds. They're great kids. They listen. They trust me. That means I have a responsibility to lead them in the right direction. Allow me to illuminate your misdirection as if I were coaching you in order to be crystal clear. You are being neither compassionate nor responsible. Equity is a tactic that has been employed in every communist and fascist government of the past. Its goal is singular: create ubiquitous groupthink. The product is two classes: the privileged few and the enslaved masses. I hope it is not your intention to limit us from speaking against these issues. I warn you against violating our constitutional rights. You would be treading dangerous water. Let me remind you, you serve the taxpayer. Since you've forgotten your role, we'd be happy to teach you about the principles of the Constitution and the stories of people who died to afford you the, quote, privilege to sit up there, hide behind your masks, and dictate rules fed to you by your state and union benefactors. In closing, the hero narrative is a constant throughout the history of civilization. The hero is not a follower of the group, they lead. They stand up for what they believe and call out injustice against overwhelming odds. So to the parents, faculty and staff, students and teachers whom we fully support, please blow the whistle. Reach out to Wake Up D99 with your evidence of indoctrination. You can be anonymous and reach us at phone number 630-909-3496. I can assure you there is no shortage of heroes behind me that will fight for you and our children, and they will never stop This is not a threat. It is a promise. Thank you.
Our final speaker is Christine Martin. Christine Martin is the final speaker.
In 2019, there was a lesson through Positively North called Microaggressions. It was a lesson plan taken from the website of DebbieIrving.com.
Could you please put up your mask, please?
We're going to need to, you need to keep your
Please
mask.
stop the time then.
I did.
My time
I'll
back.
restart your time, but you have to keep the mask above your nose while you speak.
Debbie Irving, so a lesson plan taken from website of DebbieIrving.com. Debbie Irving is a white woman who teaches all light-skinned people are white supremacists. I suggest everyone in this audience check out her site because our school is using her lesson plans. The lesson, as usual, was very subtle, wrapped up supposedly with niceties. The students were encouraged to watch, to listen, to notice their surroundings and their fellow students throughout the day. And should they take in something they found offensive, they were to write it down on the sheet provided to them by the school. They were to write down on their quote-unquote tracking chart what they personally judged as inappropriate and offensive defined by a person's gender, race, class belief, system, etc. It was then suggested that they turn in the sheet, which I might add had lots of space for lots of snitching. When I held that sheet in my hand and I took in what I was seeing, there was nothing positive about it. The only thing I could think of was 1930s Germany. Turn in your fellow countrymen. Hitler went for the youth. As he said, he alone who owns the youth gains the future. Janice Schwartz and several administrators and teachers often remind me of this statement, as do several of you on this board. Every meeting, people come here and we make public comment. We stand here with integrity, with decency, we've done our homework, and we know what we're talking about. We are educating you. From the audience, I watch you listen. You're bored. You heed none of our wisdom. Your arrogance leads to your closed minds. Across our nation, parents are rightfully flooding school boards, livid with anti-education that has marched into our students' classrooms. District 99 is our district, and we will not relent until you no longer, several of you, not all of you, but several of you, hold seats on this school board. In closing, I address Nancy. At the July meeting, you read an official statement that you are not teaching CRT in our classrooms. You've been teaching it for years. CRT just now has an official name. Your statement was a lie, Nancy. You're a liar. Shame on you.
I'm sorry, that's inappropriate. No, she was saying.
All right, our meeting will continue. Please, if you're going to leave now, I ask that you do it quietly so we can continue our business, or just hang out for a few minutes while we do communications and announcements. Lend? Jenny, anything?
The meeting is Friday.
Okay.
Sassid, Joanna? Sassid?
Sassid.
Oh, I don't have a report this week. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that part. Yeah. I didn't hear.
99?
I do have something.
I'm sorry, Terry, I didn't hear you.
Really?
I couldn't hear Terry, I'm sorry.
Do you have a
Ready?
report?
Okay. We had a workshop
You
on...
pull the mic up close,
Oh,
Terry.
okay.
Go ahead.
Should I wait till everyone leaves?
No, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. For the foundation, we had a workshop on how to function with our Google Docs because not all of us were familiar enough with it. So we did that. And then I don't know if anybody mentioned it before in the meeting, but we did Young Hearts for Life here at South High. On Thursday, we screened over 2,000 students, and we did find some with some issues that needed to be resolved. And so I want to thank all of the volunteers that volunteered to work. We had a very successful day, and it was very good. And the foundation, along with District 99, sponsored the event. And then we will be doing the same thing at North on October 7th. So if you have any students at North, be sure and sign up, because it's a very worthwhile program. And what we do is screen for any heart issues that may not just show up with a simple heart check. So it's an EKG. And I'm sure that North is going to need volunteers for that. So if you look on their website, and you can get in there and volunteer for that. And it's a shortened day, so it'll be from 7 to about 2:30 on the 7th. And we're also looking for new members to join the foundation. So be sure and come to our website and kind of get an idea of what we do, because we do a lot of learning grants for our teachers that help our students. And either that, or you can contact Julia Beckman, our president, who happens to be here tonight, and she will be happy to speak with you about the foundation. So I'm sorry, that's my commercial, but that is it. And I just want to say, in coming to the ribbon cutting here 2 weeks ago, it was a fabulous event, and this auditorium just tells the story. It is absolutely magnificent, and your tax dollars made that happen. So thank you, and be sure and try to come Saturday to North for the same ribbon cutting kind of thing, and you can see how beautiful North is, because Mike Hines took us on a tour. It was fabulous, and it's a little different, but it's beautiful, beautiful. So sorry to take up so much time, but that was important to me.
Chris, did you have anything on IASB? Okay.
III is still moving forward.
Yes, I heard, yeah.
There's a fall division meeting coming up, and we are hosting the spring division meeting over at North High. Give us a chance to show off our facilities to superintendents and boards across DuPage County.
That'll be really fun, because
Yes.
we've attended a lot of other meetings over the years at other schools that have gotten to do just that. So
And you know what?
the people showing up.
Naperville Central, was it, that we went to?
Yep.
They're going to eat their hearts out.
I hope so.
It's not a competition, Terry.
I know it's not a competition, but it is. Everyone in District 99 should be very proud of their schools, and I can't say enough about it. So.
Second.
Okay. Upcoming board meetings: on October 4th, we'll have a workshop meeting at 6:30 at the North High Auditorium, and October 18th, a business meeting at the South High Cafetorium, not in this room, but in the cafetorium.
Down the hall.
Down the
We
hall.
have to keep moving, because these spaces are being
Kids
used
are
by
using our
students.
spaces as they should.
Okay, with that, we just need we have no closed session. We just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Mike and Chris, I think?
Chris.
Mike and Chris? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody, for your
Ladies
service.
and gentlemen, I need
Oh,
everybody's
wait.
signature today.
Yeah, every board member needs to stop and sign the budget with
Will do.
Julie.
How you voted for the budget.
Okay.
And maybe
Thank you.
those who
That's your